Hello everyone, welcome back to the series of video lecture on English for Skill Enhancement. I am Arif Ahammed. I teach English at Department of SNH, MLR Institute of Technology. Today I will be discussing about redundancy. So let's see what are the main thing that I am going to cover in today's lecture. The first thing is definition of redundancy. So I will be talking about the definition of redundancy. Means a basic introduction about redundancy, what is redundancy, and then the most important part, I will be talking about different types of redundancies and their examples also. Fine. So let's see the first part of today's lecture. What is redundancy? Right. So, like from the name itself, redundancy. Do you have any Are you getting any idea about what it might be? Normally, what is the meaning of redundant? Redundant means something that is outdated, which is not relevant anymore. Right. So let's see the definition. Redundancy in English refers to the use of unnecessary words, phrase or ideas that repeat or overemphasize the same meaning. So what happens? In a very simple way, redundancy means using extra words or repeating same idea again and again, which are actually not relevant. So they are called redundancy. So remember, redundancy means something that is not relevant or that is not required. Fine. Now, while redundancy is often unintentional and weakens writing, it can sometimes be used deliberately for emphasis or rhetorical effect. So basically, when it comes to technical writing or, normally writing that are associated with our field, engineering field and all, we are not supposed to use redundancy. But then when it comes to literature, let's say writing a poetry, novels and all, in those kind of writings, redundancy is being used because they also serve the purpose of adding emphasis or rhetorical effect. Now these are not characteristics of technical writing. So as an engineering student, I should be avoiding it. Fine. I hope it is clear. So redundancy means something extra which is not required. Your sentence you can write a sentence or you can manage a sentence without using those extra words. So those extra words are known as redundancy. Fine. Now let's see types of redundancies. What are different types of redundancies? So first thing is called tautology. What is tautology? Using different words, it can be adjective or adverb, anything, to say the same thing, resulting in repetition of meaning. So basically we use two words or more than two words also it can be sometimes used, but there would be few words which would be unnecessary. They would simply be repeating the same idea. See the example here. It can be both adjective and adverb. See here, free gift. This is a perfect example. Free gift. We often say, right, I received a free gift. Now, what is the meaning of gift actually? Gift is something which is inherently free, right? You cannot, spend money to get a gift. Hey, normally what? Gift is something that you receive free of cost. So, gift is free. This is implied in the word itself. You don't need to add the word free gift here. Only gift would be fine. A gift is inherently free. Right, similarly, completely. So here free, you can see adjective, it's a unnecessary thing. It's repeating the same idea. Completely destroyed. Now, what is the meaning of destroyed? Destroyed itself implies completeness. If something is destroyed, that means what? The destruction is complete. That's why you are using the word destroyed, right? If it is not completely destroyed, you cannot use the word destroyed. You can say affected or damaged, right? But if something is destroyed, that means it's complete. The destruction is complete. So here, completely destroyed, the adverb completely is not required. It's redundancy. Similarly, another simple example, past history. We often say, I got to know about his past history. Okay. Now, what is history? History is by default means something which is past. So you don't need to use the word adjective again past here. It's redundancy. So in each of these three things, you see we got three redundancy. Free is redundancy here. Completely is redundant. Similarly, past is redundant. Fine. So I hope it's clear. Now, whenever you are dealing with redundancy, you have to understand one thing, that it's not only enough to know what are the redundancies. You also need to know how to avoid them, right? How to remove them from your sentence. So instead, these are improved versions. I already have told, instead of using free gift, you should only use the word gift. Instead of using completely destroyed, you should be using destroyed only. Do not say past history. Instead, you say history. Fine. So This is called tautology. Tautology means, please remember, it's using different words to say same thing, resulting in repetition in meaning. Fine. Now next one, another types of redundancy. Second type of, this is called pleonasm. So what is pleonasm? Pleonasm is using more words than necessary to express an idea, often unintentionally. So we use here what? Extra word to express. Unnecessarily we use extra word to express an idea. See here, return back. Okay, the word return back already implies going back, right? So instead of using the word return back, you can simply use return. Please return back to your seat. No, you don't need to say back, because return is implied a back kind of movement, right? So you have to simply say return to your seat. Fine. ATM machine. We often say this. Is there an ATM machine nearby? Now what is ATM? The last letter M stands for machine itself. So when you are using the word, or you are saying the word ATM, you are already saying the word machine. So it's unnecessary here. You have to simply use ATM. That's enough. Fine. Repeat again. Now, to repeat means to do something again. So this is unnecessarily using. We are using here again. So instead of saying repeat again, we have to simply say repeat. Because repeat in itself implies that we are supposed to repeat the act. We are supposed to perform the act again. So again is not required here. Fine. So this is called pleonasm. Fine. Understood? Now next concept. Redundant phrases. Sometimes instead of, now in the previous two types we saw that they are only one word, right? But here a complete phrase also can be example of redundancy. See here, phrases that are add unnecessary words without contributing any additional meaning. So in my opinion, I believe. See here, this entire phrase, in my opinion, is redundant here. Why? Because when I am saying I believe, I don't need to say in my opinion, because that is same thing. So instead of saying in my opinion, I believe, we can directly start the sentence like I believe, then whatever is the sentence. Fine. Similarly, I personally think, when you are saying I, that means that is implied personally. No one else can think on your behalf, right? You are thinking it personally only, so it's not required to say personally. You can simply say I think. Fine. Similarly, the reason is because. Instead of saying the reason is because, you have to simply say the reason is, or because. Either you say the reason is that, or you say because. Okay, you don't say the reason is because. This is an example of redundancy. At this point in time also is redundant. You have to simply say at this time, or you can say currently. So these are all example of redundancy. Fine. So this is redundant phrases. You can see an entire phrase, group of words also together can be redundant or irrelevant, which we should avoid in writing. Fine. Next type, repetitive sentence structure. Sometimes what happens, we use the similar kind of sentence structure. See, the example will clarify it more. She left the room because she didn't want to stay in the room any longer. So here, can you find the redundant, repeats the idea of leaving the room. You see, there are in two sentences, you are repeating the same idea. She left the room, this is one. Leaving the room, you are conveying the idea of leaving the room. And then stay in the room. He didn't want to stay in the room. Didn't want to stay. This is same idea. So how do you rectify it? She left the room because she didn't want to stay any longer. You don't need to again use in the room. Understood? So he answered the question because he knew the answer to the question. Again, he knew the answer to the question. It's redundant here. It's not required. You have to simply say he answered the question because he knew the answer. Again to the question is like repetitive sentence structure. So that's why it's example. All these are example of redundancy. Fine. Next one, circular statement. Sometimes we issue a statement which is circular in nature. Now how? You can see here. A beginner is someone who is just beginning. Circular statement. It looks like same. We are coming back to the same point, right? We are moving in a circle. So instead of that, what you have to say, a beginner is someone who is new to a task. That's how you explain. This is called circular statement. This is redundancy. These are also one example of redundancy. Leadership means being a good leader. You have to, instead of saying that, you have to say leadership means guiding others effectively. Fine. So this circular statement also can work as redundancy, and we need to avoid them in writing or speaking. Fine. The next one, repetition in different sentences. Sometimes when we write a paragraph or essay, let's say, what we do when we run out of content, often what we do, we just unnecessarily repeat the same thing. See the example here. The weather was cold. It was freezing outside. You needed a coat because it was cold. So basically 3 sentences I am using, right? The weather was cold. It was freezing outside. You need a coat because it was cold. So you can see the weather was cold. It was freezing outside. And then because it was cold, all these are same thing, repeating the same thing. Instead of using 3 different sentences and using these many words, you can make it very short and precise. How to do it? As the weather was freezing outside, you needed a coat. Here outside should be added. Or even if you don't use the word outside, that is also fine. As the weather was freezing, so that means it's implied. When you are talking about weather, obviously you would be talking about the weather outside. So as the weather was freezing, you needed a coat. Fine. Too simple, right? But here there are many redundancies. So here you can see redundancy is not only about 1 extra word or 2 extra word. It can in fact be a multiple sentences also. Sometimes we use 3-4 sentences, but actually we can, instead of using 4 sentences, we can convey the meaning in 1 single sentence. So in that case, the 3 other sentences are actually example of redundancy, and we should avoid them. Fine. So I hope it's clear. Now, why to avoid redundancy? Now, why we need to break our head over redundancies? Because what? Improves clarity. If we avoid redundancy, what will happen? We'll be able to eliminate redundancy and makes writing more concise and easier to understand. So, if we don't use redundancy in our sentences, the meaning would be much more concise and easier to understand. Because the reader will not have to go through many words, many sentences. They will get the main meaning, the main message very quickly. So the flow would be much more easier, much more smoother, right? So that's why it improves clarity. Avoiding redundancy will improve clarity. Then it obviously saves time, because 3-4 sentences you can write in 1 single sentence. So obviously someone who is reading it will be able to save time. And then enhance professionalism. Avoiding redundancy is also one trait of being professional, right? Clear and direct writing appears more polished, hence they are considered as more professional also. And then strengthen arguments. Avoiding repetition prevents arguments from feeling paddled or weak. So let's say when we are having an argument, what happens, or when we provide an argument in our writing, if we repeat the same idea again and again, the argument would become weak. It will fall flat, right? So if we are able to avoid redundancy, what happens? Our argument also would be much more tighter and much more stronger. So these are the reasons that we should avoid redundancy, for the sake of clarity, for saving time, for enhancing professionalism, and for strengthening our argument. Fine. Now, when redundancy can be useful, but there are certain cases where redundancy can be useful also. It's not like we have to always avoid them completely. It depends on the context. If you are writing something, technical, let's say, a technical report, you are not supposed to use redundancy. There is no space for redundancy in that case. But let's say if you're writing a literary piece, it can be a blog or it can be a small passage about something, then you can obviously add redundancy, because what repetition can be used to stress a point. Because sometimes when you repeat something, some idea again and again, it adds stress, it adds emphasis, right? So that's why redundancy can be used if we want to put extra emphasis. For example, he was absolutely, utterly, completely in love. So instead of saying these 3 things, we can simply say he was in love. These are actually redundant. But then say if you want to put emphasis, if you want to convey it in a very strong manner that he is in a very deep kind of love, then we can use all these 3, though they are redundant. So whenever we require some emphasis, redundancy can be used. For rhetorical purpose also, this is literary device. To make our writing more literary, we use rhetoric. So tautology or pleonasm may be used intentionally in speeches or poetry for stylistic reasons. So in order to enhance the style of writing, you can see here, I saw it with my own eyes, emphasizing the first-hand experience. Here I want to put emphasis on my first-hand experience. So I saw it with my own eyes. With my own eyes actually is redundant here, because what is the meaning of I saw? Obviously I must have used my eyes only, right? My own eyes only. That's why I'm saying I saw. So instead of saying I saw it with my own eyes, I can well say I saw. But when I am using this particular sentence, this entire sentence, I saw it with my own eyes, that means I want to put emphasis on the fact that it was a first-hand experience. I myself actually have watched it. I have seen it. That's why it is adding emphasis. So for that purpose also, to add emphasis or for rhetorical, to enhance literary, stylistic perspective, to improve the stylistic of any language like writing, any written piece, we can use redundancy. Otherwise, in normal writing, academic writing, technical writing, redundancy should be strictly avoided. Fine. I hope it's clear now. So let's see what are the takeaway points of today's lecture. We got to know about what is redundancy, and then we got to know about different types of redundancy, 4 and 5 types of redundancy, and then why to avoid redundancies, like why it is important for us to avoid redundancies. And then in the last, towards the end of the lecture, we also got to know there are certain cases where we actually can use redundancy in order to add emphasis or in order to add literary, as in order to make our language a little more literary, right? Rhetorical purpose. Fine. I hope it is clear. So thank you everyone for being with me. I'll meet with you again in the next lecture with a different topic. Thank you everyone.